Okay, so in a prior video, I showed how you could add 6 SATA drives to your EliteDesk. And I used 2 adapters. One, this is for a 6 adapter one, but because of how the cables were set up, I only was able to really fit in 4. Then I used another adapter for the additional 2. Well, now I would like to turn this into a network attached storage or NAS. I'm going to be using these 4 1 terabyte drives to achieve that, and I'll probably be using TrueNAS as the software. But I need some way to boot up, so I'm actually going to take out this adapter, and instead I'll use one of these adapters, which will allow me to put a 2230 NVMe drive in the Wi-Fi slot. This is going to be running most likely Proxmox with TrueNAS running as a VM underneath it. So our first step is to get rid of this adapter and the cables, and then we'll come back and we'll install the Wi-Fi adapter. So first take off these SATA cables. And I'll probably have to move these out of the way so I can get to these. And we'll just pull this straight through. And make sure we're taking the right one out. Let's see. Okay. Okay. And then we'll finally take out the adapter. Okay, that should all fit nice. I have to decide exactly what I'm going to do with the boot drive. I've been debating whether to set up a fresh Proxmox node and then copy over the VM that has my current TrueNAS that's running a NAS that's off of 2 USB drives. That's the one I've been wanting to replace. Or do I start out fresh and do a full fresh TrueNAS and not worry about that old one? So we'll come back to putting the adapter in once I decide what I'm going to do. Well, after lots of different permutations, experimentations, failed copies, everything else going on, I'll spare you. It's not in the video, is that I just went ahead and created a new node, and in this case I call it PVE4. PVE3 is what used to host the my PVE NAS virtual machine. And so what I ended up doing was set this PVE4, and I was able to migrate. There's a choice here called, migrate. And it warns you, of course, because we're using local connections to USB and so forth. I went ahead and forced it, moved it over. It didn't take that too long. Then I went and I pulled the drives off of the USB drives off the PVE3 physical machine, put it onto the new machine, and brought up this TrueNAS VM,
And surprisingly, it actually saw the drives and everything worked. So that's great. But of course, that's not my long-term solution. The long-term is using the SATA drives. So what I thought I'd do is I'd show you some of the things I did, first of all, on the Proxmox side to ensure that I could see the drives. And then we'll go into TrueNAS and I'll kind of show what it would take once you get it there as far as setting up the particular configuration for the drives and such. So there is a way where you can pass through the SATA drives, and you have to go in and there's some config files and other kinds of stuff. I really kind of wanted to stay away from that. I wanted to, as best I could, to use the GUI controls, and I figured what would make the most sense is to pass through the SATA controller. So since this is part of a cluster, what I did is I went down and there's a part here called resource mappings, and under PVE 4, what I did, if I would do an add and find PVE4, I scrolled down until I found this, which is the ASM 1166 serial ATA controller. And I pass that through. In my particular case, I just call it SATA for or SATA. And then that way, TrueNAS can see the controller, talk to it directly, see anything that's connected to it, in which case, in our particular case, would be the 4 drives. And then that way, I wouldn't have to do them individually. And, there's a lot to be said on both sides, but this to me seemed like the easiest. So once I did that, then when I went into TrueNAS, the drives popped right up. So let's leave here and we'll go into TrueNAS. Okay, so this is the TrueNAS dashboard. You see here that our current setup, this PVE NAS, it's kind of running, we're about 72%. If we go to storage, we can see, if we go up to disks, the 2 external are these guys, PVE NAS. They're both 2 terabyte USB drives, but we want to use these 4 here. So if we go to storage, it will actually say, hey, there's 4 unassigned disks. What do you want to do? Let's add them to a pool. And we'll say we want to do a new pool. We'll just name it SATA. And you go through and we're going to do this RAID Z1. It asks for the disk size. It already knows that we're dealing with 1 terabyte drives. Width basically says how many drives do we want to use. And we want to use all 4 of them so that we can get the most space. And that way also we'll have, if one drive goes bad, the rest will continue to work. At this point, there really isn't much more to do. So I'm just going to say save and go to review. Okay, so a couple things to note. So this is estimated usable raw capacity, and so this is about 2.7 terabytes, which makes sense because you're doing redundancy and the striping, all that fancy stuff, so that way if a drive goes bad, you don't lose everything. You can just get a replacement and stick it in and add it to the pool, and everything will kind of sync up and ready to go. So that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to say create pool, confirm, and it's going to go through, check out the disks. So there we've got our new pool. It's using 4 of them, the capacity, and then now you may see over here under disk health where it failed some smart tests. If we view that, these were actually old ones that failed, And from my understanding is you have to kind of wait for those to fall off the radar because I reran, because you notice here it ran these short ones and it was a success. Now, I would suggest, especially because most likely you're like me, you're going to be using old drives, I would go under manage disks, find your particular drive. So like in this case, this SDB, I'd come down here and go to manual test and run the long one. It probably takes about, I'm guessing, maybe 30 minutes. I would run the long one on all of your drives just to make sure that everything looks good. I did it prior, came out a-okay. One of the reasons I ran it was that initially it had shown some failures, but when I ran it again, everything was fine. Now, those failures could have been pulled from I guess the smart memory on the drive, and those may have come when I was doing some other experimentation and disconnecting things and so forth. So I would run the long one to make sure everything looks okay. So now we've got the two storage. Right now I've got data sets set up under my old one, doing some NFS, rsync, and also SMB, which is just, you're basically your Windows shared folder. And then here's the SATA one. I'm going to most likely migrate these guys over to the SATA so that I can either format and maybe use this old one. Maybe I'll keep it around. I'll see. I don't know if I really want to continue to have USB external drives on this and just, taking up juice and everything. Maybe just stick with the main one and then maybe partition off and have just a small one that I could use for, I don't know, IoT devices, smart TV, something that could be able to connect to and pull down resources. You could have photos on there, something that is not on your main network. And there's some ways to do that with VLANs and so forth, but I'm going to experiment that on my own and see how all that works out. And I'll just show you real quick what everything looks like now on the actual physical machine.
So here we've got obviously our G3. Here are our two external USBs, the 2 terabytes. We've got our 4 1 terabyte drives here connected in, and you can kind of probably hear the hum of the drives. It's not too bad. I guess you might call it soothing. Not particularly, hot. I mean, I'd call it maybe warmish. The unit itself, pretty good. You can see the stuff coming out the back. Of course, you got 2 less connectors because we got rid of the one. Inside of here is the adapter that turns the A&E Wi-Fi slot into a M.2, so we're booting off of it. I'm going to take this whole unit, turn it up on its side, and replace where the existing or older SATA was sitting. I realized later that I never showed how to put in the 2230 into the A&E slot. Please watch my other video that talks about how to set this up for the G3. But just for full disclosure, so that way you kind of see how it would be done. Of course, my current NAS is all nice in place, so we're just using another EliteDesk here. So what's going to happen is that this is first going to be screwed in to the A&E slot. And then you take your 2230, stick it into it, and then you're going to screw that one down. And there you have it. You'll be able to boot off of this. You can put Windows 11 on it. You can put Proxmox, Linux, whatever it is. It will boot from it. And then, that particular setup will be able to see your external SATA drives.